There was a time when love was pursuit, when men wrote letters soaked in emotion, when waiting in the rain wasn't foolish, it was romantic. Back then, effort was the language of devotion. Men didn't fear rejection, they feared missing the chance to love deeply. Every glance, every smile, every heartbeat carried purpose. A man's worth wasn't measured in money or status, but in how much courage he had to express his feelings. But slowly, something changed. The world became louder, faster, more superficial. Technology gave everyone a stage, but it also gave everyone masks. Love became a performance, not an emotion. Men started noticing that no matter how much they tried, their effort wasn't respected anymore. The same actions that once melted hearts were now labeled simp behavior. And when admiration dies, love follows. This was the silent beginning of a massive psychological shift. Men didn't stop chasing overnight. They were pushed into silence, one rejection, one manipulation, one heartbreak at a time. Each disappointment rewired their mind. They realized love was no longer mutual. It had turned into a test of endurance. And the smartest ones, the ones who used to love hardest, were the first to stop playing that game. Because here's the truth, a man doesn't stop loving easily. He stops begging for love that hurts. He stops proving what should have been seen. And when he finally goes quiet, that's not coldness, that's awakening. At first, men didn't understand what was happening. They thought maybe they weren't trying hard enough, so they doubled their effort. They sent longer texts, they waited longer for replies. They apologized even when they weren't wrong, just to keep the peace. They thought love required sacrifice. They thought patience would be rewarded. But all they got in return was silence, distance, and emotional confusion. Every ignored message, every delayed response, every mixed signal, it all built pressure in the male psyche. It wasn't just rejection anymore, it was humiliation disguised as modern romance. He was told, don't be needy, but also show effort. He was told, be confident, but also don't be too sure. No matter what he did, he was wrong. And over time, his spirit began to collapse. That collapse is what psychologists call emotional fatigue, when the mind stops fighting to be understood. When a man feels like no matter how genuine he is, his love will always be undervalued. That's when the chase loses meaning. It's not about giving up, it's about self-preservation. So men started pulling back, not because they stopped caring, but because they couldn't keep bleeding for people who never noticed the wounds. They realized that silence protects more dignity than chasing ever could. They realized that peace isn't found in someone's approval, it's found in emotional independence. The modern man isn't emotionless, he's exhausted. He's tired of explaining his worth to people who only notice when he's gone. So he walks away, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. And that's the quiet revolution no one talks about. A generation of men who no longer chase love that feels like war. Something changed in the silence. When men stopped chasing, the world thought they'd lost interest. But they hadn't. They had gained awareness. They realized that the loudest form of love isn't in chasing, it's in choosing peace. For decades, men were told their value depended on how much they could give, their time, attention, loyalty. But when every act of devotion turned into an expectation, it stopped feeling like love and started feeling like labor. The modern man evolved. He stopped seeking validation from affection and started finding meaning in solitude. He began investing energy into what he could control, his growth, his health, his mind, his mission. Because when you chase peace, you never end up empty-handed. Now, instead of begging for replies, he reads books. Instead of waiting for someone to care, he builds something that lasts. Instead of trying to be enough, he becomes exceptional, not for anyone else, but for himself. This is not withdrawal. This is transformation. This is what happens when pain turns into discipline. He learns that emotional control is power, that walking away isn't losing, it's leading. The strongest men no longer shout for attention. They master the art of silence. In that silence, they find clarity. They see through manipulation. They understand the games. And most importantly, they stop playing them. The evolution of masculinity isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about returning to balance. Because real masculinity was never about dominance. It was about direction. And now, that direction points inward, toward peace, toward purpose, toward a life that doesn't need permission to feel complete. Modern love isn't built on emotion anymore. It's built on attention. The dating world turned into a marketplace where feelings are traded like currency, and validation is the only product that sells. What once required depth now demands display. People don't fall in love quietly anymore. They broadcast it, filter it, and wait for likes to confirm it's real. Love isn't measured by loyalty, it's measured by visibility. And in that transformation, something sacred was lost. Women once admired men for their strength of purpose, their quiet confidence, their focus. Now many measure a man's value by how much attention he gives, how much effort he proves, how much he bends. The chase that once symbolized romance has become entertainment, and every time a man plays along, he loses a piece of his dignity. The modern man saw it all, the mixed signals, the power games, the temporary affection that disappears when attention fades. He realized that love in this era often isn't love at all, it's leverage. Whoever cares less wins. Whoever withholds more controls. So he stepped back. He stopped chasing what was never standing still. He stopped performing love and started observing reality. He learned that true connection doesn't demand constant proof. It flows effortlessly between two people who value each other equally. The tragedy of modern dating is that everyone wants loyalty, but no one wants to give stability. Everyone wants attention, but no one wants effort. And so, love turned into a paradox. Everyone chasing validation while pretending to be independent. But the awakened man no longer plays that game. He doesn't chase attention, he commands respect. He doesn't prove his worth, he embodies it. Because real love doesn't ask you to lose yourself, it meets you where you stand, as you are. When men stopped chasing love that drained them, they discovered something far greater, themselves. For the first time in decades, they redirected all the energy they once poured into uncertainty towards something that could never betray them, growth. He began to rise earlier, train harder, think deeper. The same man who once waited hours for a reply now spends hours mastering his craft. He invests in his health, his body, his mind. He's no longer addicted to attention, he's addicted to progress. This is the new breed of men the world didn't expect. Quiet, focused, disciplined. Men who don't need to prove anything because their results speak for them. They don't argue with anyone, they outgrow them. They don't compete for validation, they compete with their old selves. Every heartbreak that once broke them now fuels their mission. They've turned rejection into redirection. Because a man with purpose becomes dangerous, not because he harms others, but because he can't be controlled. The world used to say he changed after heartbreak. But the truth is, heartbreak didn't destroy him, it revealed him. It showed him that peace isn't found in someone's approval, it's found in alignment with your destiny. So now, men build quietly, they work in silence, they upgrade their mindset, their finances, their fitness, not to impress anyone, but to never feel powerless again. And the irony? When a man stops chasing, that's when he becomes most desired. Because peace, discipline, and self-respect, those are the new luxuries. And only men who master them become truly free. There was a time when silence was seen as weakness, when a man's refusal to argue was mistaken for fear. But the new man understands something the world forgot. Silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. When a man argues, he gives his peace away. When he reacts, he gives his control away. But when he stays silent, he keeps both, peace and power. Because silence forces others to face themselves. It removes the noise and exposes the truth. The modern man no longer explains his worth to anyone. He doesn't chase closure, he creates it. He doesn't beg to be understood. He understands that not everyone deserves access to his energy. That's not pride, that's protection. Silence has become his armor. It's the moment he steps back, observes, and decides who's worthy of his words. The louder the world becomes, the quieter the wise man grows. He knows that real strength isn't proven in noise, it's preserved in calm. Every time he walks away from chaos, he grows stronger. Because walking away isn't running, it's rising. It's choosing to protect what the world keeps trying to destroy, his inner peace. This shift confuses people. They call him emotionless because they can't manipulate him. They call him cold because he doesn't overreact. But in truth, he's simply reached a higher level of control. The man who once fought to be heard now finds comfort in being still. Because he finally understands, silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. And in that silence, something powerful happens. He becomes unshakable, untouchable, unstoppable. For centuries, men were told to hide their emotions, to be stone, to be silent, to be strong. They were taught that tears meant weakness and vulnerability meant defeat. But what no one realized is that emotional suppression doesn't create strength, it creates distance. It disconnects a man from his own truth. The new generation of men is rewriting that rule. They're not afraid to feel, they're afraid to lose themselves while chasing what doesn't feel right. They've learned that emotional intelligence isn't softness, it's strategy. It's the ability to feel everything yet not be destroyed by anything. Now, the evolved man knows how to recognize manipulation without reacting to it. He senses energy before words. He can tell when affection is genuine and when it's transactional. That awareness gives him power, quiet, invisible power. He doesn't suppress his pain anymore, he studies it. He learns from heartbreak instead of hiding from it. He turns his emotions into information, and that's what makes him unstoppable. A man with emotional intelligence doesn't fall for every compliment or every confession. He understands patterns, not promises. He doesn't confuse attention for affection or consistency for control. He sees beyond the surface, into the truth behind people's actions. The modern man no longer wants to be hard, he wants to be whole. He knows that being emotionally intelligent means feeling deeply but reacting wisely. It means you don't lose your center no matter what storms come. And this is where the quiet revolution reaches its core. Men who no longer chase validation but mastery. Men who understand their emotions but are not ruled by them. Men who can love without losing, give without draining, and walk away without breaking. Because true masculinity isn't the absence of emotion, it's the control of it. Men didn't walk away because they hated women. They walked away because modern love stopped feeling like love. It began to feel like a performance, a game where honesty loses and manipulation wins. Many women of today grew up being told to never settle, to always test him, to make him chase. And for a while, that strategy worked. It made men compete, prove, and pursue. But over time, men started to see the pattern. No matter how genuine they were still treated as options, not priorities. And that realization broke something sacred. When a man feels like love is conditional, dependent on status, looks, or constant effort, he stops offering his soul. He gives the minimum, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Because giving too much to someone who gives too little isn't generosity, it's self-destruction. The modern woman says she wants a strong man, yet tests his strength by constantly challenging his peace. She says she wants a loyal man, yet flirts with attention from strangers online. She says she wants connection, but her actions show competition. And slowly, men began to understand. It's not love they're losing, it's balance. So they withdrew. They didn't stop caring, they just stopped entertaining chaos. They stopped proving their worth to people who couldn't recognize it. They learned that peace is the new romance. Ironically, the more they pulled back, the more attractive they became. Because nothing is more magnetic than a man who doesn't beg to be chosen. His calm confuses people used to chaos. His stability feels like power in a world addicted to drama. The truth is, men didn't change because they wanted to. They changed because the game changed, and they refused to keep losing themselves in it. Now, they no longer chase love that costs their peace. They watch, they observe, they choose. And when they move with clarity, not emotion. Awareness changed everything. Once men began to truly observe, they realized the game wasn't built for connection, it was built for control. Every post, every story, every test was designed to feed a cycle of attention, not affection. Love had turned into marketing, and people had turned into brands. The modern man started to see through it all. He saw how social media trained people to crave validation more than intimacy. He saw how dating apps rewarded indecision, not devotion. He saw how authenticity was replaced with aesthetics, how everyone wanted to look in love, but no one wanted to feel it. He began noticing the patterns. The same compliments used on everyone, the same cold replies meant to create mystery, the same emotional traps disguised as independence. And with every realization, the illusion began to crumble. That's when men stopped chasing, not women, but illusions. They understood that chasing in this world doesn't lead to love, it leads to loops. You chase, you impress, you lose value. You pull away, you gain interest. It's a system built on imbalance, a psychology of scarcity. So the awakened man chose differently. He started chasing peace, not people. He replaced texting games with gym sessions, confusion with clarity, and manipulation with meditation. He realized that the rarest currency in today's world isn't attention, it's authenticity. And when a man becomes aware, he becomes dangerous. Not to others, but to the system that once controlled him. You can't trick a man who values silence. You can't manipulate a man who's detached from approval. You can't seduce a man who already feels whole. This awareness birthed a new generation of men, calm, composed, and clear. They're not anti-love, they're anti-delusion. They want connection, not performance. And that shift, quiet but powerful, is changing relationships forever. Every transformation begins with one question: what about me? For years, men were told that real love meant sacrifice. Give her your time, your energy, your peace, your soul. But no one ever told them that without self-respect, even love becomes slavery. The awakening began the moment men stopped asking, "What can I do to keep her?" and started asking, "What can I do to keep myself?" That shift changed everything. They learned that self-respect isn't ego, it's emotional hygiene. It's what keeps you from bleeding for people who keep reopening the wound. It's what reminds you that loyalty is only noble when it's mutual. Now, when a man feels disrespected, he doesn't argue, he exits. When he senses manipulation, he doesn't fight, he detaches. When love demands self-betrayal, he chooses solitude over submission. Because he finally understands that peace is the highest form of intimacy. He no longer needs someone to complete him. He completes himself through growth, purpose, and control. He doesn't need constant praise. His results speak louder than validation ever could. His mirror becomes his measure, not other people's opinions. This return to self-respect didn't make men heartless, it made them whole. They still love, but now with standards. They still give, but now with boundaries. They still care, but now with clarity. And ironically, that's what makes their love purer than ever before. Because when a man loves himself first, he no longer loves to be accepted, he loves to be understood. He no longer begs for peace, he creates it. And once a man reaches that level of self-respect, he becomes unstoppable. Because you can't manipulate someone who values himself more than your approval. Every man reaches a moment when the pain becomes fuel. The heartbreak that once broke him now builds him. The rejection that once destroyed his confidence now sharpens his focus. He stops asking why me and starts saying watch me. This is the era of the purpose-driven man, the one who no longer seeks meaning through others, but through his mission. He knows that purpose is the one love that never leaves, the one partner that never betrays. When he pours himself into his goals, he feels alive again. Work becomes therapy. Discipline becomes peace. Every early morning, every late night, it's not punishment anymore, it's healing. The same energy he once wasted proving his worth to others now fuels his evolution. He learns new skills, builds his body, grows his wealth, expands his mind. He realizes that self-improvement isn't vanity, it's vengeance against the version of himself that once felt powerless. And as he grows, his energy changes. People sense it. The same ones who ignored him now watch him in silence. Because power is quiet, it doesn't need to announce itself. The man who once chased is now being followed. Not because he tried harder, but because he became rarer. Pain gave him purpose, and purpose gave him peace. Now he no longer fears losing people, he fears losing progress. He no longer measures his value in attention, he measures it in achievement. He doesn't chase love anymore, he attracts respect. That's the real transformation. Not bitterness, not arrogance, but evolution. The man who once sought validation now builds legacies. And his silence, once mistaken for weakness, has become the sound of victory. There's a new kind of man emerging, one that the world isn't ready for. He's calm, but not passive. He's kind, but not naive. He's confident, but not loud. He's strong, but not violent. He embodies a power that doesn't need validation, applause, or attention, because his strength speaks for itself. This new masculinity is built on control, not chaos. He doesn't need to prove dominance, he lives in discipline. He doesn't argue with the world, he outgrows it. He doesn't chase attention, he commands presence simply by existing with purpose. The calm man is the most dangerous man, not because he threatens, but because he cannot be shaken. You can't guilt him into submission. You can't seduce him with flattery. You can't break him with silence. He's mastered himself, and a man who has mastered himself is free from every external chain. Society once told men to shout to be heard. Now they whisper, and still everyone listens. Because silence with confidence creates gravity. It draws respect without demand. The new masculinity doesn't come from muscles or money. It comes from emotional discipline. He can love deeply without losing direction. He can walk away peacefully without resentment. He can face rejection without revenge. He no longer defines himself by how many people want him. He defines himself by how few can disturb him. His peace is his proof of power. His consistency is his quiet rebellion. This man doesn't compete with others, he competes with the man he was yesterday. And in that private battle, he wins every day, not by defeating anyone, but by evolving beyond everything that once controlled him. The world calls him detached, but he isn't detached, he's disciplined. He still feels, but he chooses what deserves his energy. He still loves, but he never begs to be loved back. And that balance, calm, confident, and uncontrollable, is the purest form of power a man can ever reach. Men didn't stop chasing because they lost interest. They stopped because they found clarity. They learned that love isn't proven through pursuit, but through peace. Now they move with purpose, not desperation. They give without losing themselves and walk away without hate. This is the evolution. Men who no longer chase validation, they attract respect. Because the modern man finally understands. Peace is the ultimate power.